Hello and welcome to the channel. This is Literature Simplified, where I explain literature in simple English. Today we are going to discuss the major works of one of the most accomplished authors of the Victorian Age. This is not a video about her personal life or a biography of any kind. In this video, we will talk exclusively about her novels. Before the world knew her as George Eliot, she was born Mary Ann Evans. She was a woman of formidable intellect born in 1819 amidst the rural landscapes of Warwickshire. Her father's work as an estate manager exposed her to the stark and glaring difference between the wealthy landowners and the labourers who worked on the land. This early exposure to the workings of provincial life, combined with a radical intellectual journey in London, where she met and was influenced by many writers and thinkers of the time, led her to abandon her religious faith for a secular humanist philosophy, creating a writer unlike any other in the Victorian era. She lived in social exile due to her relationship with critic George Henry Lewes, who was already married, and she adopted a masculine pseudonym to ensure that her serious philosophical ideas wouldn't be dismissed as mere ladies' fiction. What followed was a career marked by literary genius. Now let's look at the works of George Eliot, starting from her very first foray into fiction. The first is Scenes of Clerical Life. The story consists of three long tales: the sad fortunes of the Reverend Amos Barton, Mr. Gilfil's love story, and Janet's repentance. Set in the fictional town of Milby, these stories depict the unglamorous lives of local ministers. We see Amos Barton struggle with poverty and the death of his overworked wife. Mr. Gilfil hiding a broken heart behind a grumpy exterior, and Janet, an abused wife, finding the strength to leave her husband through the support of a dying preacher. These stories avoid grand religious miracles, focusing instead on the quiet internal struggles of the common soul. The theme of this work is radical sympathy, the belief that the most ordinary flawed people are worthy of deep psychological study and compassion. The next novel is Adam Bede. The story follows Adam Bede, a stoic and upright carpenter who is deeply in love with the beautiful but vain woman, Hetty Sorrel. However, Hetty is secretly seduced by the local squire, Arthur Donnithorne, who eventually leaves her to join the army. Terrified of the social shame of her pregnancy, Hetty tries to find Arthur, fails, and in a moment of madness abandons her newborn baby in a field. She is later caught and sentenced to death, but her punishment is later reduced and she is sent away instead. The theme is the collision of duty and desire, an exploration of how one compulsive act can ripple out to destroy an entire community's peace. The next novel is The Mill on the Floss. This story centers on the intense bond between the spirited intellectual Maggie Tulliver and her rigid brother Tom. When their father loses the family mill in a lawsuit, Tom vows to pay back the debt and forbids Maggie from seeing Philip, the son of the man who ruined them. Later, Maggie is tempted by a man named Stephen Guest. They accidentally drift down the river in a boat together overnight, and although she remains pure, the social scandal ruins her reputation. Tom disowns her, but when a catastrophic flood hits the town, Maggie rows a boat to save him. They reconcile in their final moments before the current pulls them under and they drown together. The theme of this novel is the web of family and society, the tragedy of how early attachments and social expectations can stifle the growth of a brilliant individual. The next novel is Silas Marner. Silas Marner is a weaver who has lived as a reclusive miser for 15 years after being framed for theft by his own religious community. He earns a living by weaving and is fiercely protective of his hoard of coins until they are stolen by the local squire's son one day. This sends him into deep despair. However, redemption appears on his doorstep on Christmas Eve in the form of a toddler named Eppie after her mother dies in the snow. Silas raises her as his own, finding that her golden hair and her love are the true replacements for his lost wealth. Years later, when her biological father tries to claim her, Epi chooses to stay with Silas, the man who gave her a life. The theme is redemption and human connection, a fable showing that wealth is found in the ties that bind us to others and not in material hoards. The next novel is Romola. Set in 15th century Renaissance Florence, Romola is the scholarly daughter of a blind antiquarian or collector of old books and antiques. She marries a charming but deceitful Greek scholar named Tito Melema. Tito betrays Romola's father by selling his library and lives a double life with a secret second family while involving himself in political plots. Romola attempts to flee her unhappy marriage but is persuaded by the monk Savonarola to remain in Florence and devote herself to moral and social duty. After Tito is eventually killed by his vengeful adoptive father and Savonarola is executed, Romola finds a new life by taking in and caring for Tito's mistress and children. The theme of this novel is intellectual and moral growth, the conflict between personal happiness and the larger duties we owe to our conscience and society. The next novel is Felix Holt, the Radical. During the political unrest of the 1832 Reform Act, which was enacted to address severe imbalances in the electoral system, an idealistic and penniless man named Felix Holt tries to prevent a riot but accidentally kills a man and is imprisoned. Meanwhile, a refined lady named Esther Leon discovers that she is the rightful heir to a massive estate held by the Transome family. The current heir, Harold Transome, falls in love with her and offers her a life of luxury if she marries him. Esther must choose between a life of aristocratic ease and the difficult life of social reform with the man she loves. She eventually renounces her claim to the estate to marry Felix and live a simple and meaningful life. The theme of the novel is true political reform, the idea that social change must come from the individual's character and education, not just from a change in law. The next novel is Middlemarch, a study of provincial life. This is arguably one of George Eliot's most famous works. It tracks multiple intersecting lives in a fictional town called Middlemarch. The story follows Dorothea Brooke, who marries the elder scholar, Mr. Casaubon, in hopes of a great intellectual life, only to find him cold and mediocre. Parallel to this is the story of Dr. Lydgate, who arrives in the town with dreams of carrying out his medical research, but is deeply in debt and suffering in a shallow marriage. After Casaubon dies, leaving a will that forbids Dorothea from marrying his cousin, Will Ladislaw, Dorothea must decide between love and money. Ultimately, she chooses love over her fortune, while Lydgate dies young, feeling that he has failed his scientific potential. The theme of this novel is the web of human interaction, how the small, unhistoric acts of individual people slowly shape the progress of the world. The next novel is Daniel Deronda. The story is split between two central figures. The first is Gwendolen Harlett, a beautiful, selfish woman who enters a disastrous marriage with a sadistic aristocrat to save her family from ruin. In her misery, she turns to the compassionate Daniel Deronda for help. Daniel, meanwhile, is on a journey of his own. He rescues a Jewish girl named Myra from suicide and eventually discovers that he himself is Jewish. After Gwendolyn's husband drowns, she hopes for a future with Daniel, but he has already decided to travel to Palestine to help establish a Jewish homeland. He leaves on his mission with Myra, leaving Gwendolyn to begin her own difficult journey towards becoming a better person. The theme of this novel is vocation and identity, the search for a higher purpose beyond the self and the emptiness of aristocratic society. George Eliot's work beyond the novels. While the 8 works that we discussed are the pillars of George Eliot's legacy, her literary output was vast and varied. Before she ever published a novel, she was a prolific translator, most notably producing the English version of David Strauss's The Life of Jesus from German, a task that helped her to shape her philosophy and beliefs. Throughout her career, she also produced influential essays such as the famous Silly Novels by Lady Novelists, along with poetry and several short stories, including the haunting supernatural novella The Lifted Veil and the satirical fable Brother Jacob. Her final published work, Impressions of Theophrastus Such, was a series of satirical character sketches that reflected her continuing interest in moral psychology and social observation. Her extensive letters and journals further reveal a woman who was constantly in dialogue with the great scientific, political, and social minds of the 19th century. However, it is through her novels that these complex ideas were given a human heartbeat, allowing her to reach a global audience. In tracing the chronological works of George Eliot, we see the evolution of a sociological mind. From the rural sketches of Scenes of a Clerical Life to the grand global vision of Daniel Deronda, Eliot's career was a constant attempt to map the human soul. She moved away from the simple, happily ever afters of her contemporaries, choosing instead to show the beauty in failure, the dignity in ordinariness, and the slow, difficult process of moral growth. Her novels remind us that we are all part of a web, that our smallest actions, whether kind or cruel, vibrate through the lives of people we may never even meet. George Eliot didn't just write stories, she created a new way of looking at the world, proving that literature's greatest power is its ability to expand our sympathy for one another. As she famously wrote in Middlemarch, the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts, and her body of work remains a testament to that quiet and enduring truth. So that was all for this video. If you liked it, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos on works of literature explained in simple English. And I'll see you soon in the next video.